stories like crazy, because everyone has mental health and everyone has a story, and sometimes they're crazy. Join Lori Lane Murphy and me, Adriana Prosser, as we talk about dealing with, struggling with, and managing mental health with storytellers who want to share their true life story. Get in the conversation with us and talk to us on Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe on YouTube. Now, let's smash some stigma. In this episode, we talk to Dave Keystone, who talks about loss and those unexpected losses that hit us really hard. Here, let's have a listen.
So now I don't have an end to this story. I'm not sure if I'll ever have an end to this story. But something pretty profoundly different happened to me recently that I think obviously relates to mental health, and I'm not sure people will be able to relate to it. But it's super profound and interesting. Is that my dad? This isn't the super profound, interesting part. My dad in September passed away, September 3rd. And then 2 months later, out of nowhere, with no warning, my psychiatrist of 12 years, who I saw twice a week, every week, just died suddenly. And it was so strange because he was like, in a way, arguably next in line as like a father figure in my life. I never told him that really. We talked a lot in therapy about, the transference of our relationship and my kind of, in a way, resistance or difficulty admitting that he and I had a meaningful relationship, because for me it was really tough, because I feel like when you're paying someone, if the money runs out, they just take off. That's kind of a relationship that I found to be a little difficult to kind of reconcile with, thinking that, oh, my psychiatrist is there for me through thick and thin, when like a part of it is through money. Mm-hmm. And he always said, if the money runs out, we'll, talk about blah, blah, but whatever. Anyway, so then he dies out of nowhere. And like my dad dying was obviously really tough for me. It sent me to a pretty dark place, but it was expected. He had cancer. And so there was a long buildup and a lot of mental preparation. And then 2 months later, to have my psychiatrist just die suddenly was like, it was wild, because it sent me into, I've never felt more alone in my life, because I couldn't mourn with him, with his family, because I don't know them, and it's inappropriate for me to, push reaching out. I sent them a letter, but I can't mourn with them. I don't know them. And then I can't mourn with my family or friends, because nobody knows him. They know of him. They just don't know who he is. And so they can't really relate emotionally. And then you find yourself in a place where you're like, I'm actually mourning the death of someone who's arguably, so I work from home, and so I don't see people that often. I saw him twice a week, every week, for 45 minutes each. Not just that I saw him for an hour and a half total each week, as literally the person in my life that I saw the most on a weekly basis for 12 years, but it's like 45 minutes and a full hour, if you put both 45 minutes together, of like actual saturated, concentrated time. So I'd say to people like, so what I thought was wild is that not only did he pass away, but I lost the person who I saw the most on a weekly basis in my life. I communicate with the most with on a weekly basis in my life, like the most meaningful communication. And out of nowhere, they're just gone at a time 2 months after my dad, when I kind of needed someone like that the most. And then so for like 2 weeks, it was so depressing and alone, because you really couldn't, like, I could talk to my friends and family, but like they can't relate. And so you really, like, you're mourning the death of someone that's one of the closest, most profound people in your life. You're mourning them absolutely alone in every way. And then, which is wild, because I just came off of like Jewish people, and I'm sure you know this, but just for anyone listening, the Jewish people have a mourning period called Shiva that lasts about a week. And so in Shiva, a lot of people say how great it is because everyone comes around, your whole community shows up and everyone supports you. And that was for my dad, all beautiful, all great. Shiva ends, and then I have to mourn the next in line, basically father figure, absolutely alone.
Mm.
And it was crazy. It was unbelievable. Like, it was so depressing that it was almost comedic. And I, like, it was so, and I used to tell my psychiatrist that we used to joke about the fact that, like, it wasn't funny, but like, we joke a little bit at kibitz about the fact kibitz. I'm using the word kibitz because gefilte fish to shit up. We'd joke about the fact that, like, what if he just dies suddenly? Like, what do you do if this person just goes away, this like rock in your life, this stable human being, stabilizer for you, right? Like, because a lot of people, their psychiatrists or therapists, is their like go-to once a week or once every 2 weeks, just stabilizer. And what if they just disappear out of nowhere? What do you do? So we would joke about that, and then it actually happened. And then so I went through 2 weeks of like so much darkness, just at home, paralyzed on my couch. It was almost like I was in when someone, like in wartime, in war movies, when you see someone gets shot and they don't know they've been shot because they're just in shock. It was so shocking that I didn't know what to do, but just I emailed my family and friends, my closest. I said, this just happened. Can't really talk about it. Don't want to talk about it, but I'm going to need some time. And so everyone just left me alone, which was nice. But what's wild too is that there was for like weeks, or for like a week or two, there was no, what's it called when they put it in the newspaper?
Obituary?
An obituary. There was no how he died. I just got a call out of nowhere one day from another doctor who said, Sabelis, oh, sorry, I said his name. I mean, if you can mute that later, please do. If you can't, I understand. That my psychiatrist out of nowhere, they said that he passed away, or they had to cancel the appointment. I said, why? Is he okay? And he said, actually, no, he's not. He died. And they didn't know how, because he called like really short. The psychiatrist who called me called really shortly after he'd passed, so they didn't know how yet. And then his obituary didn't come out for a couple of weeks, and it was only posted on the funeral home's Facebook page. So like, you really had to look every day for a few weeks, Googling around to try to find an obituary. They didn't publish anything in the newspapers. And so it was like he just vanished from the face of the earth for like 2 weeks. And then eventually the funeral home posted an obituary, and a friend of mine found it. What I found a little bit uncomfortable was, for me, my psychiatrist was like a private place that was mine. And so I actually didn't want to know anyone else who went to see him. And so when I told a few people that this happened, they're like, oh, is his name so-and-so? Because my other friend, said the same thing happened. And they saw him too. And so I actually didn't like that. Like I didn't want to know who else was going to see my same psychiatrist. So that's kind of the story of like that. And it's not, sometimes in the storytelling community, they say like, don't just anecdotally tell a story, tell how you felt. And so I tried to do that a little bit here, but I didn't really craft this story in a way as like kind of a, like a live performance.
And that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. And then what's crazy too, just because this tag on needs to exist in this story, because I know we're already going on a bunch of minutes, is get this. So when your psychiatrist or your doctor passes away, you actually legally own the rights to their notes.
Mm.
Oh my gosh, give me a break. So there's a company that's like in Toronto. It's in like a suburb of Toronto. There's just like a little like storefront in like a strip mall that the psychiatrists, your doctors, all of their notes get sent to this company, and they're there for 10 years, and you can pay like $100 or whatever it is to have the notes sent to you, hard copy or digital.
No.
And so I decided to go through with that. And so I now have a box in my apartment, and I've opened it just to give away the punchline, the climax of the story. But I have a box in my apartment of 600 pages, which, to give people an idea at home, is about 9 or 10 inches thick. So it looks like an encyclopedia or like an Oxford dictionary of twice a week, every week, my psychiatrist 12 years of notes on me.
Oh my God.
Ain't that
Wow.
something?
Like, who has that? Seriously.
I know. And so just to answer a couple of your quick questions, because these are always the first people's questions. Have I opened it? Yes. But was I going to? Not for a little while. I thought it'd be like kind of, it's like it's like Pandora's box.
Yeah.
But what I did is I opened it, and like I started seeing him in like 2007 or something. So I opened it and I figured emotionally, if I read like the first page, the first day, anything I was talking about then or any opinion he'd have of me then, like no problem. I can emotionally handle it regardless of his opinion. And so I read the first page, and it really is just like as if he's kind of reporting, as if he's going to hand these notes off to the next doctor. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, having trouble with girlfriend or sad about this or whatever about that. It really is just kind of a play-by-play. Hmm. So it's not like the kind of when people think your psychiatrist notes, it's like going to be like what they think of you, you know? It really isn't as much that. There's a little bit of that where he kind of says like, patient or he thinks this, I think might relate to his mom or, something like that. But there's not like it's not like his like locker room just, shooting the shit, giving his opinions on me. So it's actually like, it's actually super fun. So for a bit, I was opening it up. I was like, I just open the box and just like take like 4 inches, flip it open. And I'd be like on like, April 7th, 2011 or something, and just read it, ignoring the last inch, because the last inch is like probably the last year or so about my dad like passing away. So I didn't want to like go down that about like my emotions, but it was really interesting to flip open and be able to read things that were going on 10 years ago that are actually still kind of going on today. And learning that like, I'm not sure that I've never been sure of the idea that like there's a quote unquote cure for things, or there are these aha moments in therapy. And reading some of the things that I was talking about then, issues in relationships, issues with my life, they're the exact same today. And I don't think that's because he was a bad psychiatrist or because I needed to be on some medication or because things are wrong. I think they're just like, it's like this self-acceptance, like things you just have to learn to deal with.
Yeah.
And so that, I think we could round that out as that's my story.
Wow.
Is that I go from my dad passing away to my psychiatrist suddenly passing away to somehow, some way, me ending up with his notes.
Wow.
And I'll tell you another quick little side thought, and I'm pretty good at side thoughts, so stop me if I go too far, is I was talking to my girlfriend the other day about it, and because we're in this COVID-19, quarantine, self-isolating time. And so I've been thinking about things to do online, like, people going live on Instagram and live on Facebook, and like so I work in entertainment and broadcasting, and what can my like contribution be or show? And I had this idea that I would go online like every day at midnight and just flip open the box, read like half a page to the audience, and then just open the floor for dialogue.
I would watch that.
I know. But you know what? The other day I said to my girlfriend, I said to her, I haven't really I don't think that I've dealt with this, like the abandonment feeling of my psychiatrist dying. Like there's definitely a, you left me feeling going on in me. I know it's in there somewhere. And she said, I feel like I've almost been I don't feel like I've respected enough the fact that he was a person and a human and in my life as this person, because it's such a wild thing that he died that I naturally kind of turned it a bit over to comedy. Like even us, we laughed a bit about the fact that I have this box and oh my God, and what the WTF, and I don't know if you swear on this show.
Yeah, we can.
And I'm like, okay. And then when I talk to people about like my psychiatrist dying, they're like, whoa, and we all react like, oh my God, what the fuck? And like Larry David, Seinfeld styles. And then but it's like I've ignored the fact that a human being died and that he was so important to me. And so I thought like, and she said, do you think that like maybe a part of your like the abandonment thing is almost you being angry at him, and so that's why you're like willing to just turn it into comedy and go online and read his notes and blah blah blah, because you're like a part of you might be like resent him even though it's not his fault for having died,
or that you just want to spend more time with him.
Yeah, that too. I mean, and so it's like, but it's just like almost like a defense mechanism, maybe, but wanting to spend more time with him, for sure. And to be honest with you, I'm a little bit of a nut. Where right after he passed, about a week or two after I came out of the dark ages, I went upstairs to a friend's apartment who lives in my building, and he said, maybe you could see this all as like you having graduated from therapy.
Yeah.
You did your 12 years. Maybe this is like, you did it. And then, so I thought about that. And then I went through a nutty phase where I was like, oh, the storytelling community, he has an office. What if I reach out to the management company of that building and try to rent his office and like, do a storytelling event in that space and then tell people at the end of the story that we're in the office where this all happened, or I was like, I reached out to his family, and in my letter to them, I tried to ask if I could have because when my dad died, we gave some of his objects to certain close people in his life as like a memento. Mm-hmm. So I reached out to his family because he had masks in his office and radios and like cool things. And I kind of reached out and said, I know it's kind of crazy. I know you don't know me, but to have an object from his office where I spent a majority of my time through my 20s and into my early 30s would be really meaningful for me. But they never reached back. And then so I have this fantasy. This is where I'll end the story before Q&A. I have this and thoughts. I have this fantasy of one day. It turns out someone else did rent his office, and they have some of his furniture. When I used to lie on the chaise lounge, like the psychiatrist couch, I'd stare at the ceiling, and there were these two light bulbs that I would stare at that like, I kind of like, when you kind of see a face in like different objects, in the inanimate objects, like cars, the lights are the eyes and stuff. I would stare at these two light bulbs like they were like a face in the sky almost. And so literally one day I want to show up at this office and say, I know this sounds crazy. I'll give you like $200 cash. I know you don't know me. I want to buy those two light bulbs out of your ceiling, and I will give you, and here are two light bulbs to replace them. I want those two light bulbs because they were basically like, in a way, this face that stared down at me for 12 years. And so I then have those two light bulbs like on my mantle in my apartment or something. Nuts. That's the nut job side of me. But I felt so profoundly like I wanted to have an object of his, and it's been very difficult to not. And so in a way, you're right that these notes are in a way that like an extended time with him. Never thought about that I have this like transcript so I can like read his words, even though they're a little bland. It's like, it's pretty dry stuff.
You know what? It's no different than when you listen to music from the past and it transports you, right? You just happen to have shrink notes, which shrink notes. With the shrink notes of your life. And this is so, as I'm listening to you, Dave, you could so turn this into a show. You really, you really could. And you know what? There's no card, There's no card for sorry you lost your psychiatrist. So it's such a individual experience that you've been describing. And yet you've brought us into it. So, you know, it's individual while you were initially experiencing it, but maybe this is a way that you are actually grieving, and this is just the way that you do it. You are,
fair enough. Yeah. I did a live storytelling show where I told a story about my dad dying, and then I wanted to move it into, because he did medical assistance in dying, and so it's kind of a new thing for a lot of people. So I told this live story, and but the story I wanted to tell was this story in a way of like kind of my dad passing away, then my psychiatrist passing away. It was kind of, to me, that was like a whole thing. But yeah, I think that there's kind of slowly but surely I'll go to the live storytelling events and kind of tell sections of these stories, and then eventually piece it all together to potentially be like a one-person show type of thing.
Oh yeah.
And what's been really interesting about it all is that from like a mental health and like kind of the strange thing is, so my dad was a tropical and infectious disease doctor, and he was like kind of like in a way kind of like really popular in the medical community for that, and kind of like head of the tropical disease unit at the Toronto General and Order of Canada winning kind of guy. Like he was like a recipient, like he was like a larger than life kind of, like he, like right now with this COVID business, he would have been the guy on the news everywhere. Wow. And it's almost like he worked his whole life to see this crisis happen. And then he died just before it happened. So in a way, it's like a punch of the gut. But for me, it's been like almost like a slap in the face to like, just like, it's like, here, you're mourning your dad, and now the universe is going to present like the absolute epitome, the pinnacle, whatever it is, of what he was waiting for in a way, or like his field of study was absolutely this. And then what's been crazy is that he died, psychiatrist died, this happened, and I've almost, both of them passing right so close together, where it was almost like they were like my safety net in a way. Having that just completely ripped out from underneath you, it, in a way, it like makes you like, I've grown up so much in the past 3 months than ever before in my life. Like to have to stomach all this, and then now this with the coronavirus and self-isolation and losing my money and losing my, like not having work and all this stuff. It's unbelievable how well I think I've been coping with it all. And a part of me feels like I'm coping. A lot of people would say sometimes that, like, I don't know if you two have ever heard this, that like a psychiatrist or therapist can be a crutch for people. Like they just fall back on that. It's your fallback. Oh, I'll go talk to my doctor and try to figure it out. And you never do. And it's just, oh, as long as I can keep seeing my doctor. Having them not there, I don't have that anymore. And they both left at the same time. And so it's kind of this crazy thing where I've had to like, you know, I don't like, it's not like I don't like using kind of gender stereotype or gender normative language, but like kind of like become a man for myself. Cause I'm a man, identify as a man, but, you know, become a man real fast, grow up real fast, become an adult real fast. Yeah, I guess I could have just said become an adult.
Well, and that's actually what my therapist calls it, your adult, is that we constantly are talking about how I need to be my own adult. I need to be my own source of comfort. I need to look out for myself in such a way that I care for myself. I am my own caregiver. And we keep talking about the adult. And while you were talking about this latter part here, is that I keep hearing that your adult was sitting in that co-pilot seat being like, yeah, dad's going to tell us what to do because he's got the dad label and we respect him and that's his role. And my therapist, yeah, man, for 12 years, I've been listening to this person. Absolutely. I'm going to listen to him. And then when I'm not in the room with either of these people or any other caregivers, I can adult, but I don't have to adult all the time, which is really nice. Like it feels good to not have to make big decisions or carry the weight of our decisions by ourselves and like have that other adult in the room and be like, I see you and thank you for sharing that with me. But then when the co-adults are not there and you have to adult by yourself, it's a make or break. And I'm just sitting here being like, F yeah, Dave, like you said, you're adulting up, you're leveling up. You're like, okay, I'll fill the space, I'll fill the gap because that's what they want me to do. And not even what they'd want you to do, which they would, but they left you with the life lessons. Here's where I get Hallmark card. They left you with the life lessons to be able to do that.
Yeah. I always felt with my psychiatrist when I would just go and you just have to kind of like, in a way, even when things aren't working out and you don't feel like you're feeling better, because I don't know if I necessarily believe in getting better, but like I'm not feeling better. I'd go and I'd be like, what the fuck are we doing here? What am I like? We're wasting my time. It's been 10 years. It's been 11 years. It's been 12 years. The fuck. And he told me in the beginning, he said, if we're going to do psychoanalysis, it's going to take years. And no, not take years. It's years. It's a years long process. Yeah. And what I started to realize is that, or at least this is what I came up with in my own like zero science brain is like I'm not a scientist or, I don't study this, but what I kind of felt was it's almost like you need to keep going and you go and you go and you go to get their voice in your head so that they become like a parent, like a mother, like a father, like a mentor who's in your head, ingrained in your psyche. And through all the work that I'd always do with him, whenever I'd go in with a problem, it was very rarely my fault, right? Like he would always kind of just affirm that my feelings are okay. And so then having someone ingrained in my brain now, embedded in my brain, this person who would say, even if it's not you're going to be okay and everything's okay, it's your feelings are valid, your feelings are okay.
Yes.
And what you do with that later is like, to me, what like most people go for therapy. I find most people go for therapy just to kind of like get some everyday stuff out. Like, I have a problem with this and help solve that problem.
Yeah.
Versus this idea that it's like embedded in my brain. Your feelings are valid and it's up to you to work through them, but you're not wrong. And feelings are just feelings. And so I do think that 12 years in, he's in there. And I've noticed a couple times where I've had to like kind of lean on him and I hear him in my head say what he would say to me in any given situation. And it's funny, now that I think about it, I'm just having this epiphany right now that all those years that I'd be like, you just keep fucking saying the same thing. Like you're a fucking broken record. I'd be like, I know this shit. You keep saying this shit. Maybe that was the point.
Yep.
That it's like just repetition until it's actually embedded in your brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but the training wheels are off now,
Yeah, in a way. I've been thinking about, a lot of people, so people closest to me, like a sister or mother or my girlfriend or something say like, have you thought about seeing someone again or who are you going to go see? And I just, for now, so this all happened September and November of 2019. We're now, April 2020. It's been 4, 5, 6 months. It still feels like I don't want to do that yet. And it definitely feels like I'd be starting from scratch in a way. And I'm not really sure I feel like doing that. I think I feel like tackling the world myself to see how I do. I've gotten like pretty, like I've had some pretty bad anxiety spells or depression or whatever, not like paralyzing, but like certainly now everyone's being met with a lot of, emotional stress. But a part of me wants to just I like this idea of just like kind of seeing how I do on my own. I suffer from anxiety. So and I always tried to like anxiety where like I literally wake up and I'll just feel butterflies as if like I describe it as the anxiety before you're about to public speak. That if whatever your 100 is and nervousness of that, I experienced like 3% of that as like a steady baseline my whole life. It's kind of this weird thing where my body feels like it's buzzing. So we tried years, like every once in a while, to try different meds to kind of quiet the physiological tension that my body would feel and angst. We never got there. So someday I may go and like talk to like, I don't know what you call it, like a pharmacologist or like one of these people who just like looks at meds because it's an uncomfortable physiological feeling that I have.
I'm right there with you.
Yep. Same here.
But exactly. But for the most part, what's wild too, you want to hear something hilarious?
Sure.
Just remember the last appointment that I had with him. I remember it really well, which is kind of cool because it's like, what appointments do I ever remember that I had with him? But I do remember the last one really well. He had gone to my file and took it out of the filing cabinet, which he never really he does like once in a while. And he took when we're going to talk about a new medication or something, and he took it out and it was like this big, thick file, like now I have it. It's 600 pages, a massive file. And like the folders hold it on for dear life. And he put it on the couch between us. And then he never put it back in the cabinet, like during the appointment. Like he took it out about 20 minutes in and then just like flopped it on the couch. and then just sat there across from me, and this thing sitting between us, and I'm like staring at it. And I remember thinking, next appointment, I'm going to go back in there and tell him never to fucking do that again to patients. Like, take that file out and put it back in the cabinet, because all I'm thinking about for the next 25 minutes till this appointment's over is that file. What's in that file? That's 12 years of my life in that file. And I can't believe that actually serendipity, like the way the universe works, that I now have that file.
Wow.
It's so cool.
This is a very good story, Dave.
Yeah, it's wild. Another cool thing about it, just another like side thought, which is fun, is that I'm in a relationship right now. I have a girlfriend, and I've actually never really had a girlfriend in my life. I'm 38. I dated people. The joke I say is there are people that we refer to as my exes, but they were never like really my girlfriend, where it was like, I'm with this person, I'm exclusive with this person, I call them my girlfriend, they call me their boyfriend, I'm in a relationship. I never really had that for like more than like a couple weeks, to be honest. And I had just started seeing someone before he passed away, and I've been with her now for almost a year. And I'd never done that before. And he couldn't crack that code. Whenever I go in and talk about her, he'd say, that's one thing I haven't figured that out yet. I just don't know what to say about it yet. And so I think it's kind of amusing that like he died and couldn't figure out me with girls and dating. My dad died and couldn't reconcile with the fact that I'm like a struggling artist. Like, I'm okay with it. Why aren't you? And then both of them die. And within a couple months, I'm in like a serious relationship. First time in my life. And I landed a gig that is like a really big gig for me. That's going to like basically like keep me financially stable for a couple years. For the first time in my life, the first big deal that I'd ever put together in my life. And then a relationship, first time ever being with a girl where it's just me and her. Both of those things, neither of them got to see. And it was really, if you had to choose one thing that they couldn't sort out about me in their own lives, it was those things.
Wow.
My dad about my work and my doctor about my relationships.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
Really...
Fuck, holy shit.
That's so cool.
When I put it on paper like this, like in this, like when I like in this conversation, it's so crazy.
Well, silver linings. Little tiny silver linings.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you think this podcast is going to end when you hit record, it's going to continue for the rest of the day for me, for sure.
Let's keep coming back. Well, I appreciate you sharing, and I think our listeners are going to appreciate it because it's a unique story, but there are elements in it that I do think that people will be able to relate to. There's so many little nuggets in there that I think people will relate to. So, thank you for sharing with us.
My pleasure. Because we just talked about like psychiatry basically and my relationship with my psychiatrist, if there's anything I could say to listeners who, knowing that this is about mental health, I'm not a doctor. So what I'm about to say is absolutely not to be taken as like, this is a truth for everyone. It was a truth for me. I think that there's still a stigma about people who see psychiatrists and therapists. Some communities are totally open with it. They talk about it all the time. Everyone sees someone. Some communities, it's still taboo and like this thing that you don't talk about or you're embarrassed about or whatever, which is interesting because when I used to walk out of his office, if there was someone else sitting in the waiting room, I would like quickly go from his door to like the front door of the office, like not wanting to make eye contact, not wanting to see the person. But but in my whole life in therapy, it was always about my family and friends. People would always say like, they talk about some kind of cure or like getting better. And I feel like, and I haven't dived back into seeing a therapist yet, but I am an advocate for it being mental health exercise. It's just something you do. It's routine to have some impartial person there, like not impartial, but like doesn't know your world, somewhere you can just go vent for 45 minutes to a stranger basically and just do that. That's exercise. That's not like, to me, that it's exercise. It's just something that should be, that's how I saw it. And I resent people who whatever my family would say, like, you're still like sad or anxious or depressed, and you've been seeing him for 12 years, so maybe you should see someone else, or try CBD, or try meditation, or try this and that. It's like I'll try those things too, but I think it was really important to just have this one person, your quiet, safe space, and I don't think that that's necessarily always about a cure. Mm-hmm. It's about a relationship and a process and just exercise.
Amen. So, that's a perfect ending point. You're absolutely right. I agree with you 100%.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. I appreciate the space.
Thanks for listening. If you want to join the conversation, and we hope you do, come find us on Twitter and Facebook, and you can subscribe on YouTube. That's it, Stigma Fighters. And remember, your story isn't over yet, and we want to hear it.